Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week, we did something a little bit different with our Against the Odds poll, and if you're looking for the Against the Odds poll, make sure to follow the link in the description to the article on the Goldfish site. Down at the bottom of the article, you'll find a poll where you can vote for next week's deck, but we did something different. Instead of having one card, we actually had combos on the poll. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a Brewer's Minute where we talked about some infinite combos in Modern, and on our poll last week, got a chance to vote on which combo we'd be playing this week for Against the Odds. And in the end, it was the combo of Paradox Engine and Sprout Swarm, which, with a little bit of help, can allow us to make an infinite number of 1/1 sapling tokens. That's what came out on top. So this week, we are heading to Modern to play Sprout Paradox. A quick reminder before we break down the deck: if you enjoy this deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So let's talk Sprout Paradox, and the basic combo is really simple, although it involves one of the most complicated commons maybe that's ever been printed. So Sprout Swarm, 1 and a green, okay, makes a 1/1, okay, but it has Convoke, and Convoke, if you are not familiar with it, lets you tap creatures to reduce the mana cost of the spell. However, it allows you to also do this for colored mana. So, if we have at least one green creature and 5 other creatures, we can cast Sprout Swarm with buyback, the second mechanic, for free, not using any mana, just by tapping creatures, and we get a 1/1 sapling. The trick here is Paradox Engine, whenever we cast a spell, lets us untap all of the non-land permanents we control. So, if we have 5 creatures, we tap all of them, cast our Sprout Swarm, Paradox Engine untaps all of our creatures, we're going to get a 1/1 sapling, and we can just do it again. Tap all our creatures again, they untap again, make a 1/1. End result is infinite number of 1/1 sapling tokens. So that's the main idea of this deck. So the support cards we need are cards that are creatures that we can use to help convoke out our Sprout Swarm. And they kind of have dual purposes. So Paradox Engine is a bit expensive for Modern at 5 mana, so we really want to ramp into it. Plus we need creatures, preferably green creatures, on the battlefield for Convoke. So the plan is to use a whole bunch of 1 mana dorks, Noble Hierarch, Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, Brewer Druid even, to power out our Paradox Engine as early as like turn 3. And then we're going to have these creatures on the battlefield that we can use to convoke out our Sprout Swarm and go infinite as early as turn 4. So that's kind of the main plan of this deck, is to just flood the board with these 1-drops, use them to get our Paradox Engine out, and then we just convoke, untap, convoke, untap, convoke, untap, make a million, trillion, sextillion sapling tokens, and beat our opponent down. We also have Elvish Druid, and this one's kind of funny. You might think, oh, you're playing an Elf strategy, but not really. We do have a little bit of tribal synergy, but Elf is not the tribe we're really going for. But Elvish Druid pumps up a lot of our 1-drops, not all of them. Noble Hierarch is not an elf, but it pumps a lot of them up. We don't really plan on beating down with them, although being 2 toughness instead of 1 toughness is nice if we run into Izzet Staticaster, for example. And it also makes a lot of mana, so if we can cast it on turn 2 with the help of Llanowar Elves or Elvish Mystic or Brewer Druid, we will have the ability to tap it for 2 mana on turn 3, so it's basically a double mana dork, which is another way that we can cast our Paradox Engine on turn 3, combo off, and win on turn 4. We also need some card advantage, and this is where the tribal synergy really comes in. All of our creatures, while many of them are elves, all of them are also druids. So we have Guiltleaf Archdruid, and Guiltleaf Archdruid is pretty cool. It lets us draw a card whenever we cast a Druid. So any of our 1-drops, our Elvish Archdruid, whenever we cast them with a Guiltleaf Archdruid on the battlefield, we draw. So this cycles us through our deck, allows us to find our Sprout Swarms and Paradox Engines, and then if we ever get 7 Druids on the battlefield at once, which isn't impossible if we just chain together 1-drops with the card draw, we get to steal all of our opponent's lands. Lifecrafter's Bestiary is kind of similar to Guiltleaf Archdruid. It's only 3 mana, so we can play it on turn 2, Mana Dork on turn 1, Bestiary on turn 2. Lets us scry 1, almost like Thassa, God of the Sea. Every turn we get a free scry, and then whenever we cast a creature spell, we can pay a green and draw a card. These cards actually let us combo off or like kind of mini combo off without Sprout Swarm with Paradox Engine. So we have our mana dorks out. We can tap them, cast a random 1-drop. We're going to actually generate mana in that process because all of our mana dorks will untap, and then we also get to draw a card with Guiltleaf Archdruid, or pay a mana, draw a card with Bestiary, which will theoretically find us more Noble Hierarchs in all those cards, so we can always have cards in our hand and kind of cycle through our deck until we actually find the combo, or until we have so many Druids that we steal all of our opponent's lands, and then we win the game that way. The other important aspect of our deck is Chord of Calling. So Chord of Calling does a whole bunch of things. First off, it lets us just find our mana producers, so we can cast it on turn 2, turn 3. We need those 5 creatures for the Convoke of our Sprout Swarm with Paradox Engine, so it just gets creatures on the battlefield in general. It also lets us find a couple of finishers. So kind of finisher 1 is Regal Force. This isn't how we usually win the game, but it can draw us a ton of cards. So we Chord of Calling, we get a Regal Force, we have a bunch of random mana dorks out, we get to draw 5, 6, 7 cards, likely find our combo pieces, and go on to win the game. However, the big payoff is Craterhoof Behemoth, and this one's really sweet with the combo, because it lets us win the game right away. So we untap on turn 4, we got a bunch of random mana dorks, we had cast our Paradox Engine the last turn, we're ready to combo off with Sprout Swarm, so we start making all these Saproling tokens. Make one, untap everything, make another one, untap everything. Eventually you have this huge board full of Saproling tokens, and what we can do is Chord of Calling, which also has Convoke, so we tap all of our Saprolings, get a Craterhoof Behemoth. When we cast it, Paradox Engine is going to untap all of our creatures again, and then Craterhoof is just going to give our entire team like +10/+10 in trample, plus whatever, a million in trample, and we just deal this huge chunk of damage. It comes down with haste, and we just trample over and win the game on the spot. So we can combo off on our opponent's end step, which is very good because we dodge all the sorcery speed stuff. We can also just combo off on our main phase if we have a Chord of Calling, knowing that we can find our Craterhoof Behemoth and win the game that way right away, even though most of our Saprolings, or all of our Saprolings, will be summoning sick. The rest of the deck, mana base, pretty straightforward. Forests, Cavern of Souls, a couple of copies, set it on Druid mostly, but if we have a Craterhoof in our hand, we can also make sure that's uncounterable, and a couple of Ghost Quarters, just because we have room for the colorless lands. In the sideboard, Gut Shots to deal with aggro decks. Affinity, in fact, anything that's playing little creatures, Gut Shot's a great answer. Beast Within is pretty sweet. Not only does it hit anything, it also can hit lands, which is really beneficial. So against Tron, we can get our opponent off of a Tron piece, can kill a Planeswalker, just very unconditional. Even though our opponent gets a 3/3 beast, since we can make so many Saprolings, we can kind of just chump that for a long time until we eventually win. Heroic Intervention is a counter to a lot of stuff that really wrecks us. Wrath of God, Supreme Verdict, any sort of sweeper effect, Anger of the Gods, also just targeted removal. So if our opponent has Kolaghan's Command or something, which is very good, it can get Paradox Engine plus one of our creatures. Not only does Heroic Intervention give our creatures hexproof, but all of our permanents, so our opponent can't kill our Paradox Engine, can't kill our creature, keeps us in the game, so it's kind of a hoser for removal. And then we just have a bunch of disruptive things for different matchups. Pithing Needles for Planeswalkers out of Tron, for Oblivion Stone, things like that. Relic of Progenitus is helpful against graveyard decks. Thrun is for control, just can't be countered. We can cast it early, hopefully beat down and win that way. And in Nylea's Disciple, if we got a bunch of mana dorks out, gonna gain us 5, 7, 10 life for only 4 mana. So very good against aggressive decks. And Primal Command kind of does it all. It can tutor up a finisher, so we can find our Craterhoof, our Regal Force, our Guiltleaf Archdruid, one of those type of cards. It can also gain us life, and it also is kind of Tron hate as well. We can put a non-creature permanent on the top of our opponent's library and make them shuffle it in. So it is 5 mana, get rid of a Tron piece or whatever non-creature permanent is bothering us. And that is Sprout Paradox for Modern. Is this deck going to work? And I think it really depends on the matchup. We really need to be able to just like cast our stuff and combo off. I think we will be pretty good at comboing off on turn 4. I mean, we have a ton of 1-drops. We have a lot of card draw effects between the Bestiaries and the Archdruids. Chord of Calling to kind of tie the room together. And then the combo itself is pretty unbeatable once we get it set up. So I think we'll be good good at doing our thing, and that we'll be pretty consistent turn 4, turn 5, winning the game. The question's going to be, is that good enough? If our opponent is super fast in killing us on turn 3, then winning on turn 4 or 5 consistently just isn't that great. The other thing is, how much disruption does our opponent have? We need to resolve Paradox Engine. We need to have Sprout Swarm in our hand after we resolve Paradox Engine. So if our opponent can cast a bunch of Thought Seizes, Inquisitions, Duresses, that's going to really make it hard for us to win. And also, if they have just a ton of removal, Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster, Lightning Bolt, kills all our early game drops, actually resolving a Paradox Engine in a timely manner is going to be really difficult, and it's going to be really hard to win. So I think it's going to depend on the matchups. I'm confident we'll get it in some games, but we'll see how it actually goes. Regardless, I think it'll be pretty sweet once we go off and get our turn 4 kills. So anyway, that's our Against Odds deck for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon.